Okay, hopefully everything is set up properly and everyone can hear me and stuff. Let me know in the chat if anything seems funky. So yeah, today what I was hoping to do is basically take this kind of settings page from inside Netlify and try to rebuild it as close as we can using Tailwind. So for anyone who hasn't actually checked out Netlify, it's a really cool static hosting service. So if you've used GitHub Pages for anything, Netlify is basically like a way better version of GitHub Pages with all sorts of cool features like being able to wire it up to like AWS Lambda or doing form submissions or authentication, all sorts of cool little add-ons that you can kind of take advantage of to be able to build more stuff as like static sites and rely less on a back end. And the experience is really good and the design is really good. So I thought it'd be fun to try and build it. So so the way that we're going to do this today, I'm playing around with Parcel.js. I've never played around with Parcel before, the bundler, because it says it's like a zero configuration thing and seemed kind of cool. So basically, I just created an index.html file here. I pointed it at a CSS file. Weird little note, it doesn't work if you use an absolute path, which is what I would want to do on a real project. So kind of weird, but using a relative path works. So I just have this index.html file, zero configuration at all, and I just kind of spin up on the command line parcel index.html. And it just treats this as the entry point for the whole sort of bundle and looks for dependencies and does everything. So app.css is just a CSS file with the Tailwind stuff in it. I've got a post.css RC file here where I'm pulling in Tailwind and auto prefixer. I've generated a Tailwind config file. I haven't actually made any changes to this except for enabling two experimental features that we may not even use, but I just kind of like to live on the bleeding edge here. So other than that, I haven't actually done anything. So let's close a bunch of these tabs and just kind of get back to this one. So again, all I have to do here is just do like parcel index.html. And that starts up a server. And now if we head over to Chrome, that's this page here. And it actually like auto refreshes and stuff. So if I do something in the body like hello world and save, it's not working this time. I swear this updated for me automatically before. Let's do hello worldy. Yeah, okay. So it generally auto updates. So yeah, I haven't posted like a template for this or anything, which is what I think someone's asking in the chat. Mostly because I'm not totally convinced that Parcel is the best tool in the world yet. There's some weird things that are kind of bugging me about it, but I thought I would give it a try. It seemed like a nice, simple way to kind of get this started. So yeah, let's just kind of get into it. So let's just maximize this window and maximize Chrome and just look at what we need to do to start. So we've got like this header section at the top, then this kind of card that like overlaps some stuff and some stuff underneath it. So why don't we just start with this bar at the top, or let's start with this background and then this bar. So it looks like we've got like a dark gray and like a light gray. So here, let's add some classes to the body. We'll do font sans, so we'll use our sans serif font stack. I bet you they're using subpixel anti-aliasing on here. Let's find out. WebKit. No, they're not using subpixel anti-aliasing. So they're using, well, maybe they're using it on the white text. WebKit font smoothing anti-aliased. So they're being pretty intentional about only anti-aliasing stuff that is on a dark background, which I think is what I've seen as the recommended best practice. So we won't do that for the whole site. But that should be kind of enough to get us started in the right spot. Maybe we'll do leading tight too, because I think the default leading that we use is a little looser than I would want. Okay, so let's add a div for kind of this big section and we'll start putting stuff in there. So we're going to have this kind of header section at the top. And maybe let's use semantic tags. Why not? We'll have a header. And then inside that header, I think we're going to want to add a container, right? Because we want this to be contained. So let's add the container class. And we'll give the header a class of BG gray, maybe darker. We'll see. We'll just kind of play with it for now. And yeah, so let's just throw some text in here and see what we're getting. All right, so we need darker than that. Let's go, it might be darkest. We might even want to go full black. I think we want to probably go black, BG black, which isn't actually black, but it's blackish. So we'll roll with that. We can update these colors later if we want, but for now I just want to see what we can do with the defaults. Okay, so inside this container, we're going to want a div for this top section. So let's create a div here. We're going to have an SVG on the side, and then some links, and then this section on the right. So we're going to have two sections inside this. So this is going to be probably a flex container with justify between items center, kind of like a good starting point. They'll have the left-hand side, and we'll have the right-hand side. So I grabbed Netlify's logo in SVG form here. So let's throw that in. And we'll get rid of this width and height, and instead we'll use a view box. 0, 0. Actually, I don't. Let's see what happens if I do this first of all. And we'll give it a class of block for now, with H12, W12, something like that. Okay, so that looks okay. All right, so we're gonna want some text over here. So it looks like we have like, these are both links. So let's style those as just links that go to nowhere for now, and we'll just hard code my stuff in there. We're gonna want to grab this chevron. I think we can just go grab an icon for that, and we'll just copy this text to try and keep things as sort of close to what we're looking at as possible, so we can kind of see how things are working out. So let's grab this chevron. If let's see, Zondicons is like a decent SVG library that Steve Sugar put together a while back, and this has got some chevrons in it. So let's grab this chevron right SVG. Okay, so let's just grab this. I think this is probably done as an inline SVG. Yep. And it looks like it needs to be optimized. Let's copy the outer HTML. Let's head over to SVG OMG, and we'll paste this in. And I don't see it, but maybe that doesn't matter. It might still be there. Might just be transparent. So let's we'll wrap this in a span so we can style this part separately if needed. And we'll throw that SVG there. And let's just give it a fill of current color so we can target the color using our text color utilities. I'll just give it a class of text blue H6 W6. Let's just kind of see if it shows up. All right, so it doesn't look like it's showing up. So it makes me think that the optimized SVG is busted in some way, shape, or form. It might be removing stuff that we didn't want it to actually remove. So why don't we just let's go to the Zondicons GitHub. I think I have this stuff set up for Steve here, pre-optimized, and I think it's chevron right. Raw. Yeah, okay, this is better. This is what we want. What is the greatest Slayer album? South of Heaven is the best Slayer album. It is actually the best album ever recorded by any band ever. All right. So let's say text blue. We'll just kind of put back what we had here and see what we got. All right. So it's not showing up as blue, but it is there. It makes me think there's a fill baked into this SVG. But it doesn't seem like there is. Oh, we need the fill current color. We deleted that. Fill equals current color. All right. Yeah. All right. So that's working. So we're off to a good start. Obviously, it doesn't quite look right yet. So let's style some stuff here. So it looks like we want the same font size like across this whole section. So why don't we maybe wrap all of the links in a div and kind of use the cascade to our advantage here. Maybe something like text XL. And let's see, what do we got for font weight on this stuff? Looks like we got 600, which is that semi-bold, font semi-bold. And I think they're using Roboto, so maybe we should use Roboto too. If we go down to the fonts section, by default it's just using the system font stack, which I think is fine. But I think maybe what we should do is move Roboto to the beginning. So prefer Roboto if you have it installed, otherwise we'll just fall back to the system one. Because I do have Roboto installed, so this way we can see Roboto. Okay, so things are not looking perfect yet. So let's head back to index.html and figure out what we need to do. So why don't we try and get this logo next to this stuff? So to do that, we're going to want to basically set this div to also be flex, and we'll use items center, but we don't need to do any justification. And now that stuff is there. Okay, so something we forgot on our container, we need to do margin X auto. And what sort of padding do they have here? Looks like they got some pretty aggressive padding actually. See this gap here when the browser's resizing? So let's do at least like a horizontal padding of 8. Let's see what that gets us. So yeah, that looks probably like it's gonna be pretty close. That image is kind of responding in a way that we don't want, but no big deal. We're work in progress, right? Okay, so let's add some padding to this thing. I don't think it needs to be a ton. Maybe like PY4. And all right, so that's looking a little bit better. Let's style this link here. So we'll give that, if you look, it's also, when you hover over it, it gets darker, and you can see like there's a little bit of horizontal padding and a decent amount of vertical padding. So I think we're going to want to style these links as inline block to kind of be able to pull that off properly. So we'll do like a PX2 maybe and like a PY3 as a starting point. And why don't we do, now the thing that's kind of funky is that we're using black as our background color here. That's like the darkest color we have, but on hover we actually need to go darker. So we might need to explore that a little bit. Why don't we grab this color? Where are you? Let's use this color as our text grade darker. So we'll override some colors here. So, or darkest. So darkest is going to be way darker than it was before. And let's just grab this and hover over it and see what they're actually doing. So on hover. Okay, so they're adding like a, okay, all right. That actually makes me feel better. They're adding like a 20% black. So instead of overriding this color, let's keep that black there, and let's add some like semi-transparent blacks. We'll just start with black 20, and maybe we need to add some other ones eventually, but so 0.2, and this way we can use this as like a hover color. Okay, so let's say hover BG black 20%, right? And let's just see. Okay, so refresh. Come on. I think Parcel's maybe not watching that file properly. No? Let's see. Hover BG black 20. So if we hover it, we're getting nothing. So hover BG black 20 doesn't seem to exist. Is that because our Tailwind config file doesn't enable hover for background colors? It does though. So I wonder what's going on here. Hover BG black. I mean, there it is, right? BG black, but not BG black 20. So what have we screwed up? I wonder if this is just a Parcel thing. Like maybe we have to delete this cache. If so, this will just be one more reason that I regret using this tool. Okay, so what do we got now? Nothing still, eh? Hover, BG, black. So it doesn't seem like our changes are taking effect from our config file. What about our font? Are we using Roboto at least at this point? No, it's not using Roboto. So maybe it's a different problem. I mean, this looks correct. Tailwind.js. It looks like it's trying to use that correct path. But it's not building the way we expect. Yeah, I'm doing like hard refreshes here, and we're still not getting the compiled CSS that I want. Because if we look in here for like Roboto, you can see it's not showing up here. So it's almost like it's not using our config file at all, which is a little bit suspicious for sure. Yeah, we could do a console log on the config file. I bet you it's not going to show up. Loading config. Shouldn't have gotten creative with, yeah, so you can see nothing's showing up in the console here. So it's almost like it doesn't like this path. I don't know. Let's try again. I didn't spell it wrong or anything. So for me to do that, I would have to rename this file to postcssrc.js and then require Tailwind CSS. And then I don't even know what the syntax for this is, because I think this becomes an array instead of an object then. And we have to do /tailwind.js and then auto prefixer, and then probably that is a function too. Let's just see if that makes a difference. Okay, that seemed to make a difference. All right, so we'll roll with that for now. That probably changes some things for us. Okay, so you can see the font change. Now we're getting that hover style. All right, so we're in business. We just had to switch to a JS file for God knows why. Nobody knows. Okay, so let's change the font color on this link to be text gray dark, maybe something like that. What does that give us? And I mean, that's probably not quite right, but seems close. I think probably we need like font semi-bold, or no, we're already using font semi-bold. Maybe let's, oh, you know what it is we need to use anti-aliasing on this because it's on a dark background, and that's what they're doing to kind of get things looking a little bit thinner. Okay, so let's get rid of the underlines, so no underline. And it still looks a little thick. Well, localhost 1234. So anti-alias. Let's check that out. Make sure it's applying the font smoothing the way I want it to. And then for font weight, we got 600. So I mean, it is technically the same, but it doesn't quite look the same. We'll just have to accept that for now. You sure they're not using Roboto? If I select this, I swear that I saw, oh yeah, no, they are using the system font. I think it's just their logo that uses the other font. Okay, so nice. So let's just drop this down here and just roll back to what we had then. And we might need to restart the build because it seems like it doesn't watch for changes. Are we using the system font now? I didn't notice if that changed. Oh man, serious? So it looks like we still have a problem where it wants us to, we got to delete this cache, maybe. Which is really unfortunate. Yeah, okay. All right, so we got to be careful if we make changes to that file. Basically, Parcel is not as good as I hoped, but that's fine. Okay, back to what we were doing here. So it looks like they've got some rounded corners on this stuff too. And ours is also way aggressively too big. So let's go with PX1, PY2, and we'll do like rounded. And yeah, I mean, like that's not too bad. We need a little bit more space, and we also need to change the font color on hover. So let's add our hover stuff kind of right at the end. We'll do both our hover styles together. So we'll say hover text white. All right. And we might want to do like some transition stuff at some point, but we can sort of leave that till later. So we can get rid of this text blue here because we want this chevron to match the color of the actual text. So you can see it updates now, but if you look, this is kind of crappy that this doesn't stay centered, right? So let's change this to like 4, and instead of inline block here, let's do inline flex, and we'll do items center. And that's a little bit too small. But my concern is that if we change it, it's going to mess up the baseline alignment with other text. I mean, maybe that is manageable. It's not as beautiful as it is here, but maybe it's okay. So let's add maybe like a left margin here. So we get a little bit of space next to it. Too much. Still too much. I mean, that looks pretty decent. And then it looks like these are butted right against each other. So as long as we maybe add the same styles to this one, it might get us pretty close. Okay. Oh, refreshing the wrong thing. Okay, so the centered chevron doesn't quite look amazing, but it'll have to do. And we've got a gap between those that I don't think is here. Yeah, so these are butted right up against each other. So to fix that, I think we want to do the same thing here. So we need to set this to also be display flex. And that'll kind of get rid of the gap between those. All right. So let's add a little bit of space after the SVG too. So why don't we do like a margin right 4 here? I mean, that's not terrible. Our font size isn't quite right. So let's make the font size on this bigger too. So we'll go 2XL. And it's a little too big. We'll keep it at XL. Again, it's a question of like how much do we want to tweak Tailwind's kind of configuration. But let's not worry about it too much for now. Okay, so here's our div that contains the left-hand side. Now we need to put this stuff on the right-hand side. So let's throw an image in there. Let's grab the path to my GitHub avatar here, and let's just kind of see where that gives us. All right, so obviously that's not what we want. So let's give this image a class of block and maybe like H6W6 to start. And maybe like a rounded full. We're going to need a border on it too. It needs to be bigger. All right, let's go with 8. Could still be bigger. Let's go with 10. All right, that's pretty good. And it looks like here by default there's like a gray border around it. So we'll just do like a 2-pixel border and see what color that turns out as. That's too light. So we'll say border gray dark, something like that. And I think that's like pretty close. We could try darker, but it might be too aggressive. I mean, yeah, they both look pretty close. Post CSS RC is just our post CSS configuration. Tailwind and auto prefixer. Nothing to it. All right, so that's kind of like the header. Let's add this border. They've got like a gradient effect on it. Let's keep it simple for now and just do a kind of like a plain bottom border. And it looks like it's a 2-pixel border. So I think we're probably going to want to make it border gray darker, the same color as the border around the avatar to start. And if we want to do the full gradient thing, eventually we can. All right, so let's do this section underneath. So we kind of got this like navigation section. So why don't we try and be semantic and give that a nav class here. Let's just copy all of these and throw those in there. And we'll turn all these into links. All right, so we'll just wrap those. And this will be display flex. And okay, so those are basically looking okay. Looks like we're using the same color here, which I think was, what did we use? Text gray dark. All right. So let's throw text gray dark on all these. So we'll say class equals text gray dark. All right, no underline. We want to go even darker than that. Okay, we can tweak the colors after the fact. Looks like we want like an MR4, maybe something like that. Actually, you know what? These have padding on them, right? There's still a little bit of a gap between them, but it's probably only going to need to be like an MR2 because we're probably going to have like a PX2 and then like a PY2, maybe something like that. Let's see. How far in? Okay, so this one actually, that's interesting. So they have the text aligned with the logo. So it looks like they have like additional padding on the, interesting. Or maybe a negative margin bleeding out there. Trying to think what's the best way to do this. So that bleeds out all the way to the edge, but this doesn't. I think, let's see, what do we got? So this logo goes all the way to the edge. This should go all the way to the edge of that. So we kind of need there to be like a border, but once this wraps, it's going to get tricky. But they get rid of the border? No, the border is always kind of like there. Yeah, it's kind of interesting how this is going to have to work because we need like some padding on the left-hand side of this element. Maybe we just need to throw... So this is aligned, but the container for this actually is like starts here. And the border doesn't fill the whole container. And this needs to poke out the edge of the container. So this is actually going to be tricky to duplicate exactly. Let's not worry about those details maybe right away. Okay, so do these go? Okay, so there's a little bit of gap at the top of there. So let's do a PY2 maybe on this. And we'll do our hover states on this stuff too. So let's say same thing, hover BG black 20. And I think we had rounded corners and hover text white too. Yeah, there's a little dot below the avatar because that's kind of indicating that it's a drop down. Little detail that we could look at some point. Right now, I'm not going to stress over it too much. All right. It looks like their kerning is different than ours. Do they have like a letter spacing on this? Apple system. Like, see how much tighter the O and the V look on ours here? System UI, which is the same thing. What do we got for font size? I think this should be 16 by default. And are they doing something explicit? 16, so, I mean, kind of weird that it looks as different as it does, honestly. But maybe we won't stress over it too much. Yeah, definitely the fonts look different. Might just be a font weight thing. There's no letter spacing. I kind of feel like I'm cheating when I look at the actual CSS, so I try to mimic it by eye because I think it helps you get better at design too. But sometimes you just gotta find out if your eyes are deceiving you or if they're actually doing something kind of clever or not. So let's go back to semi-bold. That's the one difference. And maybe if we throw anti-aliasing on this too, I think like we can probably actually throw anti-aliased on this entire wrapper that has the dark background because that's kind of like the reason that it's anti-aliased is because there's a dark background. So let's get rid of it here. And okay. I mean, yeah, that actually looks closer now than I did before. So I'll just roll with it. Okay, so we'll make settings active, I guess, because that's the one that's active on the page that we're trying to mimic. So we'll just throw text white on that. And there we go. Yeah, we got to make that background darker for sure. But that's okay. All right. Let's highlight this link too, since it's active. All right. And I think we need to make this border darker. Darkest, maybe. Yeah, it's still not quite as nice as the kind of deep, more saturated black-ish gray that they have here, but that's okay. So maybe what we'll do is look at what they're doing responsively here. So yeah, let's just kind of get down to this size, and we can see like everything's kind of messed up here, right? So I think what we want to do is we want to at least allow these things to wrap. So that's a bit of an improvement, although ours are directly above each other, and it looks like they have a little bit of a gap between each one. So let's add a margin bottom to all of these. So I think we'll do that here. Maybe just like an MB2. And I mean, that's closer. And now we got a little bit of funkiness going on here. So they don't let the name wrap or this text, right? Like they let this whole section kind of wrap, but they don't let the actual text inside of it wrap. So let's sort that out too. So I think all we have to do is say, what is the Tailwind class for that? Let's find out. Overflow. That's not what I'm looking at. Typography, white space, and wrapping. White space, no wrap. That's what I'm looking for. So we'll do white space, no wrap on both of these links. And what does that do for us? Okay, so now we got some even funkier stuff going on. Yeah, so let's just kind of get these down to the same size again. And we got to make sure that this flex container can wrap. So let's add flex wrap here. And okay. Now, what I'm realizing is that we have this container and this container, whereas they have it all in one container. So we need to tweak that too. So let's drop this SVG down into this container. And I think we can get rid of this. And then just add item center maybe. Yeah, so that's closer. We almost have too much padding. So let's drop this down to 6 maybe instead of 8. Yeah, so things are obviously like the sizes aren't perfect. Looks like we got a little space underneath this section. I'm trying to think the smartest way to do that. I think we basically need to do like the same margin on the bottom of all of them. But we're going to have an issue where that's going to cause extra padding basically at the bottom of the container, right? But maybe that means we can actually just ditch the vertical padding on this container or drop it anyways. So maybe we can do PT4 and then PB2 to sort of try to account for it. And that should keep the spacing balanced while still kind of getting what we want here. And this image is shrinking, so let's make sure that we don't allow that. So let's say class equals flex no shrink. And that should get that back to where we want. And this is also a link technically. We can make this element here a link if we wanted to. It doesn't have to be a div. And actually, it's not a link. What am I talking about? Let's just add, it's almost like there's a button here, is the real reality from a semantics sort of perspective. So let's give this a button type button. And how about when we hover on this, we'll give it a white border. I think that's what they're doing here too. Yeah. All right, so it's okay. We're getting there. It's not perfect. Again, we're not trying to do perfect. We're just trying to see what can we do without doing any super crazy drastic Tailwind stuff. What was the keyword shortcut used to select items? I'm not sure. I think I checked that too late, so I'm not sure what you mean by items. In Sublime, I do Command D to multi-select items. Maybe that's what you're talking about. Okay, so what do we got to do? Let's do this card. So there's a couple pieces to this, right? It's got to overlap, which it's not going to do right away. And it looks like we have like an off-white background for like the whole thing. So why don't we give the body an off-white background? So go with BG gray. It's probably like lighter or lightest possibly. And it looks like it's being applied there. That's probably close enough. Okay, so let's try and throw in this card. So here's where our header ends, right? So underneath the header, we're going to have like a new div, which is kind of like the main content section of the site. So inside of that is where we're going to do some other fancy things. So this is going to be a container, MX Auto, PX6. And this div is going to be BG white, rounded LG, shadow. Looks like maybe like a consistent padding around the whole thing, like P4, something like that. And that should, yeah, so you can see we kind of have this like cardish thing here. Might need to be more like P6. And now obviously it needs to be not full width, but we'll kind of just start with this for now. So let's add a, this is, I guess, kind of like a, I don't know. Is this an H1? Maybe this is an H2. I never know semantically, like if you're allowed to put an H2 in a container that doesn't also have an H1, or if a page can have multiple H1s, because this is kind of like the H1 of this card. And down here, we can make this an H2 because it's going to live inside this same container that has an H1. So like it makes sense. Let's give it an H1. Let's have multiple H1s. And it's going to say settings for elated stonebreaker. And then underneath that, we've got this link to tailwindcss.com. So let's just throw that in there. And we got some text here in kind of like a, I don't know, is it a paragraph tag or just like a div? Let's call it a P. Never hurt anybody. And we'll do the same thing for this. Only one H1 on the whole page. Yeah. So I guess this is probably the H1, but I don't think you're allowed to have an H2 without an H1. So like this can't be an H2 because, you know, there's no H1 above it in the same container. So something to look into. We'll just roll with it for now. Okay, so I think we need to set a default font color on the whole site too. So why don't we default our text to black, which is not really black. It's like Tailwind black, which is, did this inherit that font color? Yeah, it actually looks like we might want to go not with black, but maybe gray darkest. All right. Whatever, we'll roll with it. Okay, so let's give this a font size. So how does it compare to other things on the site? It looks like it's probably the same as this font size. And I think, what did we use for that? 3XL or 2XL? Where am I looking? What am I missing here? Blah, blah, blah. Just XL? All right. Text XL, it's probably font semi-bold. It's kind of like their heading style. And for this link, I think we're going to want a class of like text gray dark, something like that maybe. Yeah. They've got like a unique approach to underlines, which I wonder if they're using a border. Yeah, they're using borders for underlines. Okay, so let's do no underline, inline block, border B. Yeah, so that looks a little closer. Although it looks like our link has a heavier font weight than theirs. I should just be font weight normal. 400. And then here, they've got font weight 400 as well. Is font smoothing enabled? No. Interesting. For some reason, their text feels lighter than ours. It might just be the color, but I don't know. It feels thinner. Am I crazy, or does that text look thinner? What am I missing? Anything clever going on here? Not really. The color, using a semi-transparent black for the color, so maybe that is part of it. Maybe the browser renders semi-transparent colors slightly differently. We could always change this to RGBA 1. Does that feel like it's closer to the lightness? Nah, it might just be the color. How about instead of text gray dark, we try text gray and just see if that's enough to do it. So that's too light. So we'll roll with dark. Yeah, it does look thinner, eh? Weird. Wonder why. No problem. We'll do the same thing here. So these will both be text gray dark. And it looks like we need some bottom margin under this stuff. So this link, I think we can make it, it's probably not display block, but it's in a block level container. So let's make sure that we, I guess if we're using p tags, then we'll use a p tag here too, even though it's not a paragraph. So somewhat regrettable. Let's go with 3. We're not getting as far as fast as I wanted to, but that's fine. Okay. Close enough. We don't need this bottom margin. What am I doing? Nope. They have the same root font size. Again, we're not trying to get it perfect, but yeah. Okay, so we got an image here. Like maybe I'll just, oh man, can I even copy that? Is it a background image? Come back. Screenshot. We'll just copy the address to that image. Okay, so we're going to want a container around this stuff. And I think we're going to want to make this flex so we can get things next to each other. And then over on the side, is where we'll kind of hard code in this image for now. Let's just see what that gets us. So obviously that's way too big. So I think we want it to basically fill the space. Or maybe we can use like some percentage column stuff. So let's think here. Are they using a grid maybe for this size? So that's like 680 out of about like 985. That's about 70%. So it's almost like they're using like a 10 column grid or something, which kind of sucks for us because we don't have that baked into Tailwind. So we'll come up with a different approach. Let's just give this like a width of, actually another thing, is it a max width? Yeah, it looks like it's a max width because it does shrink as you get, well, I guess it just changes to, let's think. So what happens here? So eventually it changes, but you see as the site gets bigger, that doesn't grow. So it's not a percentage, it's just a max width. So I think we can do something like max width medium or something. We have like these like UI sizes. And let's see, that extends to about where settings ends. This is a little bit bigger. So maybe we can go LG, although that might be too big. Yeah, that's probably too big. So we could tweak the sizes, or we could just kind of like roll with it. Let's think. I wonder if this is like a fixed size or if this is a fixed size. Which one is kind of flexible? It's probably the image is a fixed size, so why don't we do that? Let's give the image a class of like width 32 or something and just see what we get. Okay, so let's go with bigger, maybe like 48. Yeah, that seems like good enough for our purposes. And we'll give this a class of flex1 so that it fills the whole space. And yeah. So they have like a semi-transparent overlay on top of that, so we can mimic that too if we want to. So let's do like a div here with like a class of rounded, overflow, hidden. We'll move the image up inside. And we'll add a position relative to this div. And we'll add a div here with a class of absolute. Pin. And you can see if we make this like BG green, this should just like cover the image if we did it right. Yeah. So if we start with maybe like BG black 20 and then opacity 100, hover opacity 0. So now if we hover, do we not have hover set up for opacity? Interesting. Let's check out Tailwind config. Opacity. Oh, we don't. I feel like this should be in there by default, in my opinion. Let's rebuild. Delete the cache and rebuild. So someone was saying we could do parcel no cache. Let's see, parcel -h. Parcel serve help serve -h. What am I doing here? Yeah, no cache. Okay, so let's just say parcel index no cache parse. Jeez. All right. And see what we get. All right. So yeah. Okay. So now we can hover over it. I mean, it looks like it's actually a link too. So let's fix that. So instead of a div here, we'll do a and close that off. And we'll make this display block. And that should be enough to get us our pointer and stuff too. What am I doing wrong here? Image, div, position. Oh, seriously? It's not even updating my markup anymore? Okay. Now there's a little bit of funkiness going on here. I think we need to set this image to display block too because it's got some line height affecting it. All right. So that's kind of good, right? That's looking pretty close. Let's get this overlap effect going though. So I think to do this, we're going to need to basically add a bunch of padding to the bottom of this container and then some negative margin to our other container. So let's head up to our BG black and let's just add a whole whack load of padding to the bottom. All right, so there's a whole whack load of padding. Let's head down to our div here where the container is and we'll pull that up by like the same amount. And by pull it up, I mean actually pull it up. Now that's a little aggressive. So let's do 24. I mean, I think that's like close enough for me to think, yeah, we're doing okay, right? Oh, I misspelled opacity. Really? Seems like it's working. Oh, this one. I mean, I guess it doesn't even matter because the default is that, so oops, okay, whatever. So now if we wanted to, we could kind of play with this and just kind of decide, do we like it like closer? Yeah, I mean, that's closer. So let's just roll with that, I guess, for now. Okay. What about responsive for this one? So it looks like once we get to a certain size, maybe below like XL, it's almost like that image disappears. So this could be like class hidden XL block. So, and we actually only really want this max width to be on extra large screens too, it looks like. So there, that's full width. The image comes back. Oh, wait. No, not XL. What am I talking about? The max width comes back probably on like large screens. The thing that's messing with me is I got my resolution reduced. So I'm used to like certain browser sizes kind of mapping in my brain to certain yeah, so the other thing is like the way that we're doing this with the container is maybe not right either overall, because if you look at how Netlify works, it's mostly fluid with just like a main sort of max width. So we might want to reconsider how we do that too, but maybe that's like a higher level concern we can look at later. Okay, I don't want to go forever. Let's see if we can get a lot of stuff done in maybe the next half hour. Okay, so we got like 2 columns here with some cards and stuff, right? We probably won't do all of these sections because they're pretty similar to each other. Maybe we'll just do 1 or 2. I don't know. We'll see. I want to show the position sticky stuff here at least. So, yeah, let's add another div underneath this one. And this is going to be flex no wrap, because this is kind of going to be our columns. It looks like we've got some padding here. So I think what we're going to want to do is have a negative margin of 6 to match the padding of the container so that the columns themselves can have px6. So inside here, we could say like column 1 and column 2. And then we can check the browser and see if we're sort of doing things right here. So you can see like they're not filling the space, which is fine. Let's figure this out. So it looks like really this has a width, but this one's fluid, right? So let's give this like a fixed width because it's not even percentage based. So I think what we need to do here is just say something like max width small and then flex 1 and maybe like a flex none on this. So, that doesn't look quite right to me. Doesn't look like our max width small is actually taking effect. Actually, you know what I think we need to do? It can't be like a max width. It has to be just a fixed width. Let's just try width 64 for a second. Like that might be pretty close. Okay, so let's do a card here. There's no shadow on this card, which is kind of interesting. So we'll put it inside of the column, I think. So we'll just say .bgwhite, .border, .rounded. And yeah, we'll just drop some items in here. So I'm just going to copy. Oh, don't you hate when you go to select some text and like you're selecting text you don't want as well? Okay, so let's paste this stuff in. And we'll wrap all these in links for a second, just so we can get like some stuff showing up. All right. So how does that look in terms of like overall width? I think we need to go wider, which I don't know that we have a bigger one than 64. So we've got these max widths, right? And what was 64? 64 was 16 rems. So I almost think like max width XS is what we want, but the thing is we don't want it to be just like a max width. We want it to be a fixed width. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to borrow this scale and I'm going to extend the width scale with this scale because I actually find myself needing this on other projects. We've kind of got like these values for sort of like smaller sizes, and then things kind of get a little hairy in here. Then we've got percentages, and then we've got what I think of as kind of like UI element sizes, kind of more like layout sizes. So there's like multiple scales, right? There's like smaller elements where you need finer control. There's like layout style sizes, and I think I actually want to rework what these numbers are. And then percentages. So let's rebuild. Actually, let's delete the cache and rebuild. And this way we can use like our width XS or width SM to play around with that stuff a little bit. So let's try XS. All right, so that actually is probably a better size. Okay, so it looks like the active one needs like a left border, and then we've got like some sub-nav stuff. Okay, so it looks like we'll just start all these the same to start, and then we'll tweak the sub-nav ones. So I think we'll maybe do like text LG, font semi-bold. What color did we use for this text? Text gray dark. Text gray dark. Looks like we got some padding, maybe like a PX4, PY2. And it looks like we need to make sure that all of these are displayed block too. So let's, all right. And that font size is too big. Okay. No underline. Oh, no underline. Okay. So that's looking a little bit better. We want borders at the bottom of all of them except for the last one. And I think we need more vertical padding too. Border B. All right. Okay, so it looks like we actually don't want font semi-bold for all of them. We only want font semi-bold for the active one. So let's work on that. We'll do text black. And then it looks like for these ones, which are like sub-nav items, we'll do text small. And it looks like, what's the size of the link? So the link is the full thing, but it needs some extra padding. So we'll do PL6, PR4, maybe something like that. It's probably good enough. And all of these need a background color of like gray or something. Gray lighter. And more like gray lightest. It's very subtle. Okay, and the active one needs text black. Okay, and it looks like we got some pretty serious padding, or margin underneath this previous container. So let's add like an MB16, something like that. Interesting, didn't work. Wrong container, this container. There needs to be another container here. There doesn't need to be, but I need there to be another container here to feel good about the implementation. Okay, that's pretty close. Okay, let's add, there's like a left border on the active one. Now the thing is, you'll notice that even though this one has a border and the other ones don't, the text is still aligned. So that means we need to have a border on all of them. It just needs to be transparent on all of them except for the one where it's active. So I'm just gonna indent these for a second, even though that's not really correct, just so I can visually make sure I keep these ones separate and that we're not editing those. So let's do a border L to border transparent, and then this one is going to be like border teal or border green. I'm not sure which yet. Ah, son of a bitch. Okay, so we're running into a problem that is something people have mentioned to me with Tailwind in the past that we kind of intentionally didn't do, which is we've got borders on two sides and we want the borders to be different colors. So the solution to that is to use a wrapper element, which is kind of crappy, but it'll work. So let's pull these back and we'll add a wrapper div to all of these. So we'll say div class equals border B, enter, and then we can get rid of these border Bs. And that way, yeah. Okay, so now it's kind of looking more like what we want. It looks like we need a hover state too, right? Which is just the background color gets darker. So we can do that for all these links. So let's just grab basically all these. Oh, not all of them, And we'll just say, I still haven't figured out my approach to organizing these classes, like what order I put them in. Let's just see what we get. Too dark. It looks like it actually lighter. That's probably right. Does theirs match the background color? It's not quite, but it's close enough. No, you can't set border B transparent. Tailwind only lets you set the border color for the whole element, not individual sides. If we did that, I think it would do something like add 9,000 new classes or something. So we decided not to do it to start. What's the reason you did not make the container to be automatically centered? Only because the container already kind of goes against Tailwind's philosophy of like utility classes. I just really wanted a class that automatically gave me a container that was constrained to whatever the current breakpoint was. So it's less opinionated than Bootstraps. Like our container's only job is to make the current element the same size as the current breakpoint. Then you have control to do whatever you want after that. I think like one of the reasons that we didn't make it centered by default is there's like a trend of having like kind of these like left aligned websites. This isn't actually what I was thinking as an example, but I've seen a lot more people building these like sites that stay to the left instead of the center, but still might want to have like breakpoint stuff working in some sort of sane way. So I figured why make that impossible unnecessarily? You know what I mean? You can make it centered if you want by just updating your config. If you look, this is where we load the plugin. It has some configuration options. So you could just say center it and add some horizontal padding. All right, so we need to set overflow hidden on this container because the border is poking out a little bit. All right, that looks better. It's crazy how close our teal is to their teal. So if you look at these like A/B test them next to each other, you can kind of tell, right? They're not perfect, but it's very easy for me to look at this one for a while and be pretty convinced that we're looking at the same UI. Okay, so let's add this site details section. So let's add a div for that maybe on h1 site details. Oh, lowercase d, gotta get the details right. Looks like the font size is probably the same as this one. We'll just try like text XL to start. Text XL and see what we get. Font semi-bold. It's gotta be bigger. What did I do wrong? Text to XL. That's pretty close. General information about the site. General information about your site. Do they have a period? No. Okay. So we need that text to be lighter. So we'll say text gray dark maybe. Seems close enough. Again, their stuff seems thinner. Man, I feel like I have to get to the bottom of this somehow. Is it the text size adjust maybe? Is that like a thing that's happening that... Does that affect things in a way that I don't know anything about? Anyways. H2. All right, let's make it an H2. Smart. I accept your recommendation. Let's give it a bottom margin of 2. Now, they don't use Roboto, but we're not using Roboto either, are we? We used it for a second, but we're using a System UI. So it's the Apple system font. Okay, so we got another card under here. This card is looks like it's gonna borrow some of the general styles from this one up here. So why don't we'll just copy this element for a second here. We don't need the max width stuff. We don't need the flex stuff, but we do need the rounded corners and the shadow and the padding. And site information. Now this looks smaller than that, so I guess this will be an H3. Site information. We'll go with just a 1XL. It looks like we need some margin under this. Some more, some 6 maybe. And then we got a 2 pixel border underneath the H3. So we'll do border B2. Let's see if that color, oh, this doesn't need to be display flex. And that's too dark. So let's go with border gray lighter. That's closer. And we need some padding at the bottom of this too. 3 maybe? Something like that. Okay, so then we got like this oh man, there's some trickiness in this card. So here's what we're gonna do. In the interest of in the interest of time, I don't know if I want to get into this whole table, but maybe we need to do it. Maybe we just need to embrace it. All right, let's make the table, damn it. All right, so we're gonna have a legit table element here. And in this table element, we're gonna have rows. And in these rows, we're gonna have cells. And let's just get the first one done. And then the style is gonna be borrowed for basically all of them. So we'll grab this. This is going to be a link. And so there's our beautiful table. It looks like, I wonder, yeah, so there's like some percentage based widths going on for the table. Looks like maybe this would be like, what, 245 out of 912? What is that approximately? 25%? Okay, so we can make that happen. So we'll say width 1/4. Class is width 3/4. And does that mean that we have to do class table fixed for it to actually accept our... Oh, fucking tables are the worst. Width full. We might not need this. All right. It's so stupid that tables aren't full width block level elements by default. It's maybe the stupidest thing in all of the whole internet. Okay, so let's give this, are they all links? No, so we should be styling the cell, not the link. Text black, font bold, semi-bold. And now, unfortunately, links need to have that same thing applied. Although maybe there would be a way to add some inherit values. But we do need to style the... Yeah, okay, so this has to have no underline, border B, and then on hover, they change the border color. Hover, border B, black. I'm sure we have border black. Literally just talked about that. Okay. All right, so then we've got this thing, which let's not even try and do this. We'll just stick to the basics for now. Yeah, we got to do it. Damn it. So we'll duplicate this 1, 2, 3. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's just see, like, okay, in general. Looks like we have some work to do on padding and stuff like that. So one thing you'll notice is that these tables that are got the striped stuff, they bleed all the way out to the edge, which means that for this actual table, we have to do like a negative margin, like a negative MX6. And that should bring it all the way out to the edge. And now we need to do something like a PX6 basically on every single table cell. So this will sort of combat that negative margin and get the same padding. It looks like there's some pretty significant vertical padding too. So why don't we do like a PY3 to start and make sure that I don't forget these ones. What am I doing, man? I'm terrible at programming. What did I say? PY3. Is that too much? PY2 maybe. All right. Okay, so that's looking decent. Cool. So let's update the content. Okay, so the second one here, this is, let's try and memorize them. Owner repository API ID created, last updated. Owner repository API ID. Hopefully that's not some secret thing that lets you steal my credit card information. Created and last update. All right. So that's in there. We got the same content on the right-hand side though. So why don't we just change this to, we'll keep it simple. We'll just make this me with no button for a second. We'll throw this repository one in there. We'll steal my real API ID. March 4th, July 11th. And okay, now those ones are not links, so let's fix that. Actually, none of these are links. Okay, so I mean, that's like okay. We want to do like the striped stuff, right? So obviously like the easiest way to do that is to take every other cell and just do like BG gray lighter, something like this. Lightest. It's pretty subtle on theirs. Yeah. I wanted to show you how to use Tailwind's new variant plugin stuff to create a plugin that you could use for doing table striping in kind of like a cool way. But maybe I can do that on like a separate stream. So let's add this button underneath, and then maybe we'll add the footer and maybe wrap it for now. Maybe we can take another stab at some polish on this another time. Okay, so what does it say? Change site name. So underneath the table, let's add another div with a button. And is it a button or is it a link? It's a button. Button, type, button, change site name. Okay, so I think it has like a border, a shadow, px4, py2, something like that. It should be like getting us pretty close. Right, so the font is going to be semi-bold. Medium, maybe even. Again, there's something weird about how everything looks lighter. It looks like the text needs to be less dark too. Text grade darker. Darkest. Rounded. And let's just add some margin under the bottom of this table. MB6, something like that. That's like pretty close. Cool. So let's skip all these other cards for a second. And if anything, you know what we should do? Maybe just as like a quick and dirty sort of pretend hack, just so we can kind of mimic the scrolling behavior. Let's duplicate this div like 3 times or something. And that way we kind of can see that we broke everything entirely. What have we done? I clearly copy and pasted incorrectly. Is this the div? Yeah, okay. And then we'll throw some MB6 under the bottom of that. All right, so kind of like feels like we got some cards there or whatever, right? Oh yeah, these stripes don't bleed all the way to the edge of the table. I wonder why that would be. So the TR doesn't go all the way to the edge. The table doesn't go all the way to the edge. It's because of this width full thing, which is a problem because without width full, let's see, max width, 100%. Okay, never mind. There's a solution to that. Take the table, wrap the table in a div that has -mx6 on it. Grab the contents of the table. Oops. Grab the contents of the table, both of them. Close off that div, re-indent everything. Oh, that didn't work. Head up here. It's always scary trying to make edits that you can't see. Cut that, paste here, go back here, delete that. Hoping that multiple cursors are working. All right, so that goes all the way to the edge now. So that's cool. All right, so 2 other things. We got this little footer thing. Why don't we just add that just to be cool? So add another div at the bottom. Is that contained? It is. So it can be class BG black. Inside of that, there's going to be a container, MX auto, PX6. And inside of that, it looks like we've got 3 links that look like they take the same style as what we had up here. So I feel pretty confident just grabbing these, heading down here, pasting those in, trashing this, deleting the one that's different because there's only 5 here anyways. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it's going to be docs, pricing, support, news, terms. Docs, pricing, support, news, terms. It's not perfect, obviously. Why does this... that's a little bizarre. Do these... man, these need to be inline block. In this case. Okay. Let's do like a PY8 or something. And then we'll throw their little copyright at the bottom, I guess, just to be kind. Copy Netlify 2018. 2018 Netlify. And we'll go with like text SM, text gray, something like that. I don't know. Gray darker. Ah, man. Got that same problem where they have these things like kind of have a negative margin. Maybe that's like the trick. Just give this like a, what's the padding on this? PX2. So negative MX2. Yeah, I mean, that'll do. That's close enough, I think. Maybe a little extra space between them. So maybe we do like an MB2 on the bottom of this. That's pretty good. And then final thing I wanted to do is, see there's like a position thing here where that's like kind of staying there. Let's try and do that quickly here. If we find that sidebar, which I think is up here. What am I looking for here? I'm losing my mind. It's under this, right? This is it. If we give this position sticky pin T, what am I missing? Position, sticky. Does this need to have position relative? Oh man, position sticky is so confusing. What am I doing wrong with position sticky here? All right, well, I gotta eat my lunch and we've been going for about an hour and a half here, so I think we'll call it for now anyways. So we didn't get the position sticky thing going. I can figure that out another time. My lunch is gonna get cold, and maybe we can add some of this other stuff and do some of this other fancy details. But I think in general, I mean, it's pretty good. I meant for this to be flex wrap. And we could say width XS. Maybe this is like on medium screens and up. Otherwise it can be like width full. Maybe large screens and up. And it can have like a margin bottom of 6 or something too. 8 maybe. So, I mean, yeah, it's not perfect, but it's pretty good, I think. So I'll probably throw this up on GitHub or something for people to check it out. But here we go, like a pretty damn close Netlify clone in like an hour and a half without doing tons of different stuff to Tailwind. It's a config file. So I hope that was fun. I hope you learned a thing or two. And yeah, thanks for checking out the stream, and I'll see you in the next one.